Hello friends, this is Pastor Bruce again, and welcome back to part 4 of our video encounter series, what I observed back then that makes better sense of now. And what I want to urge you to do is go back and listen to part 3, where the present disparity began in our nation. If you'll do that, it'll make better sense out of this portion of our encounter series, which is part 4. Now last week, I ended our video encounter urging you to meditate on Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, which says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. What a beautiful verse, and what a reminder of God's nature to us. Now the reason I asked you to meditate on that verse is because in this section, we need to understand the unchanging nature of God, that His laws are unchanging, and that according to the Bible, the prophet Isaiah, the governments of the world are on the shoulders of Jesus Christ. It's important that we understand this as we get into the heart of the lesson. The lesson will make better sense. And so our lesson today centers around the question, what happens when men try to govern themselves and circumvent the immutable, unchangeable laws of God? Which brings me back to something I learned back then that makes better sense of now. Now, according to Del Tackett and the Truth Project, up to that period of time, and I'm referring to when Charles Eliot and Roscoe Pound were presidents of Harvard University and dean of their law school back about 140 years ago. Blackstone's law was what was taught in our nation's law schools and institutions. Sir William Blackstone was a judge, a jurist, and he was best known for his commentaries on English law. According to the life and legacy of William Blackstone, written by Douglas Cook, Blackstone's commentaries articulated a thoroughly Christian jurisprudence. Blackstone identified God as the source of law, and quoting from Cook's paper, and I quote, "Man considered as a creature must necessarily be subject to the laws of his creator." This is what Blackstone's understanding was. "For he is entirely a dependent being. The will of his maker is called the law of nature." Blackstone went on to express the primacy of God's law, once again quoting from Cook's paper. "The law of nature, being coeval with mankind and dictated by God himself, is of course superior in obligation to any other. It's binding over all the globe, in all countries, and at all times." In addition, Blackstone identified the revealed law of God, defined as those specific rules and principles found in the Bible. And he concluded, upon these two foundations of law, the law of nature and the law of revelation, depend all human laws. That is to say, no human laws should be suffered to contradict these. Not surprisingly, when you study Blackstone, you find out that Blackstone's constant companion when he wrote his commentaries was the Bible. All I wanted you to see is that the Bible, from the old song, the Bible, yes, that's the book for me, the Bible, what some consider basic instruction before leaving earth, until approximately 140 years ago, the Bible was the foundation for our nation's laws. Now, these are my words, but based on what we just read, Blackstone saw the Bible and the laws of God as the litmus test for the laws that govern man, and he saw them as universal to govern the world. On the other hand, Charles Eliot and Roscoe Pound, however slight it may have appeared at the time, helped sow the seed in our country that shifted the emphasis on jurisprudence from the never-changing laws of God to the ever-changing needs of sinful man. And back then, during the previous mentioned period of time, that 40-year period, when Charles Eliot and Roscoe Pound were the presidents at Harvard University and dean of their law school, during that period of time, Blackstone's law was thrown out of our nation's law schools and institutions, and the seeds were sown of what seemed an ever so small disparity that has now become an unbreachable chasm in the present in our nation. The current condition of our nation reminds me so much of Israel at one point in her history. The Bible says, Judges chapter 17 verse 6 and Judges 21 verse 25, that all the people did what seemed right in their own eyes. That's what's going on in our country today. And just as Israel rejected God and his laws to govern their lives and became laws unto themselves, so has our nation become. When God and his laws are rejected as inadequate to govern man, and men become laws unto themselves, or governments try to govern man according to societal needs or shifts in society, it always leads to chaos. You can study history. We have certainly had our share of chaos this past year. The point is, this is what happens when men think they have a better idea than God, when men try to govern themselves according to what they consider societal needs or societal shifts instead of God's absolutes. Now, I'm going to wrap this thing up simply by saying, as crazy as things are in the country and as deep a divide that we experience right now, this present time in our country, there's still hope for our hurting nation for the simple fact of who God is. When people in nations reject God, they suffer and lose the blessing. Yet, when they return to God, God is faithful to heal. God is faithful to restore nations and bless nations. Psalm 33 verse 12 says this, "What a joy for the nations whose God is the Lord." Notice the word, it's not nation, it's nation. So if it said nation, it would mean the nation of Israel. But what a joy for the nations whose God is the Lord. But until we meet next time, think on these things. Meditate on them. Consider what's going on in the nation, because next time we're going to further explore where that seemingly small disparity in jurisprudence approximately 140 years ago has led us in the present, whereby we're experiencing this great divide in our nation's spiritual, political, social, and economic values. God bless. And I hope you'll tune in the next time we're together. See you then.